Welcome to the Truth Driven Ministries Podcast, where we talk about things like growth mindsets, healing, communication, identity, mission, and purpose. Are you feeling stuck? Don't worry. We'll be discussing practical ways to break through and level up your life. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome.
Hello.
Today, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever suspected that you're just merely existing and not really fully alive to your life? That you're just going through in a daze and a haze, and you're like, I just feel like there's something more out there, but I don't know how to get there.
What is that called?
Well, today we are going to be talking about, am I stuck? How do I realize when I'm stuck?
Yeah.
Because sometimes when we get stuck, gosh, we don't even know we're stuck. And that's a dangerous place to be. I wrote something down and I want to read it off of here because I want to really have you understand how the mediocre life is a dangerous life. I need to stay. I always get away from my microphone, don't I? The mediocre life is so dangerous. So this is what I'd say. The most dangerous place to be is to be in a situation where it's too bad to stay living this way, but it's too good to uproot your whole life, to change it.
Right.
And I think that's really where the enemy comes in and begins to speak to us and say to us, like, it's not that bad. But then I'm miserable over here, and I get a little bit of miserable, but I don't ever get miserable enough.
Yeah.
Because I'm minimizing, I'm rationalizing, I'm talking myself into a mediocre life.
Which is no fun for anybody.
No. The scripture we're going to use today is John 10:10. The thief does not come except to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it more abundantly. That's in John 10:10. But I also wanted to read the Passion translation of this. It's a really moving translation. Let's see, John 10:10. Man, today's going to be good. Our conversation.
I think so too.
I really love to have this conversation because he did. He died for us to have life and to have it abundantly.
Right.
And we do. We get talked into that mediocre life and saying, it's not so bad.
Yeah, we
It's
settle.
not so bad.
We get used to it.
Yes. But the whole reason he not the whole reason he came, but he wants us to have a full, abundant life.
Yeah.
He doesn't want you to be tied down. He doesn't want the enemy whispering in your ear. So let's see, John 10:10. A thief has only one thing in mind. He wants to steal, slaughter, and destroy. But I have come to give you everything in abundance, more than you expect. Life in its fullness until you overflow.
Wow.
Yeah. Overflow. That's what he has come to do for you. It's so often, I think, that the enemy wants you focused on your past or what you don't have. And I think that when we get stuck in big ways, we know we're stuck. But the most dangerous stuck is, like I said, for it to be, let's go back and let's read this. I had to write it down because I will tongue twist it each time. It's too bad to stay living this way. So you build up enough tension in your life that you're like, this doesn't feel okay to me. But then on the flip side, you begin to say, well, it's not so bad that I need to uproot my whole life for this. It's too good to uproot my whole life, but it's too bad for it to stay that way. So you end up living on the fence constantly. But the saddest thing is a lot of times when we get to that mediocre point, we don't even know we're there.
No. And if we're not aware, how can we do anything about it?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so there's so much that goes into it. And on this live, we're going to just talk about recognizing whether you're stuck in this mediocre, it's good enough, but it's bad. It's not bad enough to uproot my whole life, but it's causing me miserably. Miserable life.
Miserable.
Miserably.
Yeah.
It's causing you misery. And so I really want to address that. And then we're going to, on our next live that we do, I want to talk about ways to get unstuck. We'll talk about like a how to get unstuck from that. But today, I just really want you to begin to ask yourself and invite you into this conversation that Christine and I are having about, okay, what does a mediocre life look like? And why do we get trapped in it? Where it's almost just like we go into this daze or this fog and we're minimizing and rationalizing all the things we don't like about our life and telling ourselves, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. And I think us as Christians, we try to have gratitude, and that's faux gratitude. We try to have gratitude and talk ourselves into something that's less than we want, and not in a good way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because you've got to have that tension to push you sometimes.
You really do.
But we don't want to live in it. We don't want to feel it. So we have to look away from it.
Change can be scary and difficult.
Yes.
Going from something that's always felt comfortable, even though it's making you miserable, if there's a comfort level to it, and people are like, I'm not comfortable with that. And what I mean is if you're used to it, if you're used to being, let's just say, in a relationship that's critical, that the person that you're in a relationship with is critical, you're used to being put down. So there's a comfort level. It's more comforting, crazy enough as it sounds, for you to be in a relationship and somebody to criticize you than for you to be in a relationship and for them to be very uplifting and encouraging to you. That'll feel weird. Why? It's just, you're just not used to it.
Yeah. I think it feels fake.
It does.
Like you're like, they don't mean it because they've never had anybody be that kind.
Yeah. But gosh, let them criticize you and you're like, tell me more.
They love me. We're best friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come closer. Let me date you. Let me be around you all the time.
It really is. And we see, our clients here all the time. This is what I would say is one of the largest problems is they get stuck in mediocrity.
Yeah.
If they're stuck, if they've just got a divorce and they're stuck in their divorce, they can see that. But it's kind of like when that, we're talking about where that life, it's not so bad. It's not so good, but it's not so bad. You could burn your whole life forever, your whole life here on earth in that position, but we're not meant to. If you notice, and this is terrible, most Christians live an life. And that's not what your Father has for you. And that's not what he has set aside for you. So why do we get stuck in these crazy places and don't even recognize it? We will talk ourselves out of a transformation. We will talk ourselves out of a breakthrough because it's fine. It's okay. My life's not so bad.
Yeah.
Why are we so scared to reach for that? What do they say? The brass ring.
Yeah.
Why are we so scared? Why are we so held back from that?
Yeah. I think you nailed it on the head when you said change is just terrifying. I have come to decide no one likes change. In some areas of your life, you might be very open to it, but I promise you we could find an area where you'd be like, no. We're not going to change that. And it would probably be an area that would propel you.
Yeah. One of the things that a tool that we like to tell people to use here is I call it getting out of your comfort zone. If you every day stick one little pinky toe out of your comfort zone, you don't have to, do something large, do something crazy, do something. I think when we think about change and enlarging our comfort zone, we're like, okay, I need to go jump out of an airplane if I have a fear of heights. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
But if you will live intentionally in a state that every day you challenge yourself to do something a little bit uncomfortable, then you are living in a state of constantly increasing your comfort zone. And people do it all the time. Let's say you have a hard time saying no to people. So let's say the next person, or not even the next person, but how about you say no to the least intimidating situation that
Good
day?
idea.
You don't have to say no to somebody it's just like super hard to say no to. Just say no somewhere in that day. And that's really what I'm talking about, where you don't have to blow up your life. I think people think with change, you have to blow up your life. And it's not that you're blowing up your life. It's just that you don't get to control people's responses to the changes that you want to make. You know, a lot of times why we get stuck is because we are completely reacting and selling a version of ourselves that we know people will accept.
That is very true. And that is comfortable.
It is. And the moment that we're like, okay, I don't want to be that mediocre life anymore. I don't want to be the person that just tells everybody what they want to hear. Then you begin to sacrifice because you don't get to control how people are going to treat you back. You were doing that so people wouldn't be mad at you. Now, when you begin to say no, what's going to happen?
You got to put that pinky toe out because we don't know. You don't know what's going to happen, because especially if you've never done it before.
Yeah. But chances are there's going to be a lot of people that have stayed in your life because you also make them comfortable.
Yeah. I think when you first start doing it, boy, people start dropping like flies.
They do. But a beautiful thing begins to happen. You begin to see, wow, the people that are sticking around, these are people that want to be in relationship with me. They're not just trying to get something from me. They're not just trying to do something, get you to do something. They like you. They want to be. We all have these people around us, you know, and I'm thinking of, and y'all don't know who this is, so I can say this. But there's a person that will call me every once in a while when they need something.
Oh,
I know,
that's
but they
a terrible
don't.
Feeling.
It really it gets you to the point where you begin to feel used. This person doesn't want anything to do with me until they need something, and when they need something, what do?
They call.
They call
with no problem.
Yeah, and ask. And we're in ministry, so I'm not talking about like a ministry thing. I'm talking about like on a personal level.
Right.
But eventually what happens is when that becomes the tone of your relationship, you just start saying, no.
Yeah.
No.
Not interested.
Not interested.
Right.
Not interested at all. And I think we have to live, I hate to say, actually, I don't hate to say,
say it.
A constant state of pruning. If you're not pruning your life, can you imagine, like, if you had a plant and you never pruned that plant, how wild that plant would look?
Right.
Like, that's an ugly plant. And we're trying to live ugly lives sometimes because we're not trying to prune anything off of our life. But our lives are meant to be pruned. Pruned by Him. We don't want to just go willy-nilly and be like, oh, let's prune this, let's prune that. But you aren't supposed to be a doormat. And when you are living a mediocre life, you really just turn down your life in so many different ways. And you get so acclimated to it that you're no longer challenging yourself. You're no longer who you are, your best version of yourself. But it's so subtle in some ways. It's not like, you know, you've gone crazy and you're doing all these wild things. It's just that it's almost like you're slowly being boiled. We talk about, you know, I don't know why they say this. I don't know whoever did this experiment or whoever came up with this example where if you put a frog in a boiling pot, it's going to jump out. But if you put a frog in a pot and you just barely turn up the heat, it'll get boiled because it won't jump out. And we are kind of that way with our lives. If there's not something like dramatic, then we don't get reactionary to it. And so we essentially boil ourselves with mediocrity. When what does God want us to do?
Live life and live it abundantly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in this live stream, we're going to talk about just identifying. I just want you to identify if you're stuck. Maybe you're not stuck, but I guarantee you, like if you do an inventory of your life, there's probably an area in your life you are stuck. Maybe you're not stuck in all the areas. Sometimes we get stuck in every area. Sometimes we get stuck in just a particular area. So I want you to kind of think about the ways that you're like, okay, maybe I am stuck in this area as we go through these things. But the next live, what are we going to do?
Talk about how to get unstuck.
Yeah, that's when we'll put some action to it. There's no need to put any action to this until you really realize how stuck you are. And a lot of times you don't know that you're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about, I think I have 9 ways. Okay. What are some signs you may be stuck and compromising what you really want? Number 1, your deal breakers begin to shift.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by a deal breaker, the things that you've told yourself that nope, that would never be okay with me. No, I wouldn't want that. I'm not talking about shifting your core value, shifting things that you've consciously and intentionally made a decision that as your life has unfolded, like, I need to shift this. That's okay. We want to constantly be reassessing, and as life unfolds, make conscious choices. But this is kind of, when I'm talking about your deal breakers begin to shift, that's where you begin to just kind of minimize things and rationalize things. I'll give you an example. Say, whenever we do like a singles class, everybody's going to wait for sex. Wait for marriage to have sex. Everybody's never going to live with somebody. Everybody, like, when we have the singles write down what are their core values and what qualities they want in a mate. And we say, what are the deal breakers? They have to be honest. They have to be Christian. And I'm talking about basic ones. And then somebody comes into their life and they're lonely, and what happens? 9 out of 10 times.
The deal breakers are gone. 2.5 seconds. It's okay. I don't mind. Yeah. I think this is okay with me. I think I can accept that. Mm-hmm. I think that wasn't too bad. Well, I mean, he only got caught the one time, Yeah. It's like, okay, well, she said that it was because of this or because of that. And okay, mm-hmm. Well, then we just threw that out the window.
Yeah. And like I said, it's not an intentional, like, as your life unfolds, you say, you know what, now I have more information. I know me a little bit better. Mm-hmm. I think, I need to shift this. Like, sometimes people will say, I don't want kids. And then as time goes on, they're like, you know what, in that season of my life, I didn't want kids, but now I'm beginning to think that maybe I do.
Right.
And that's an intentional, as life unfolds, you begin to think different. What we're talking about is, for the stuck, is that you just want what you want more than, like, here's your theoretical list of, this is where, when your brain is in thinking mode. If it's in thinking mode, this is what I want. But then it gets in, all the neurotransmitters and hormones flooding it. Then you're like, I don't need that list.
It's like going to a car lot, and then you're like, this is my budget. This is what I'm spending. Mm-hmm. And then you test drive that car and you're like, well, it's the same thing.
Yeah. And so when we talk about your deal breakers shifting, and the single example is just so easy, because when you fall in love, your brain goes offline.
Yeah.
But there's other areas in our life too, like where you want to live. You start to get, I would say, anytime fear comes in, like sometimes if you don't address your fears or your wounds, maybe sometimes your wounds are impacting something. And if you don't address those, your deal breakers will begin to shift.
Yeah, it'll get you every time.
Yeah. And when they begins to shift, you begin to create an alternate life that you'll be okay with, instead of just really fighting and just going before the Lord and just saying, you know what, like, I have this deal breaker about this, but I don't see another way out. Or I don't, help me with this, Lord. I'm really struggling with this, whether it be from a fear, from a wound, from your mind going offline because you fell in love. Lord, help me in this area. Help me understand it. And we kind of really began to, with our deal breakers, we pull away. And like I said, we keep rationalizing, minimizing, and we make things okay. Like, let's say you always wanted to travel and you become a fearful, it can be a relationship, but let's use a different one. Let's say you become fearful of losing your life now. And so if that fear gets too large, is it going to prevent you from traveling? It'll prevent you from traveling. But then we don't like to own that. So we begin to say things like, well, I really didn't want to go there. Like, let's say an opportunity for you to go somewhere comes up. Well, I really didn't want to, or I really can't do that. You begin to tell yourself a story, which kind of like we talked about at the healing meeting. I think we talked about stories.
Yes.
You begin to tell yourself a story that talks yourself out of your deal breaker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's one. Number two, it's kind of closely related, but it's a little bit different. You lose clarity around what is really important in your life. Like, let's say you have top 3 things and they're important. All of a sudden, they slide down your list. And again, it's not because you've evaluated, you've assessed your life in such a way where it's like, you know what? Okay, as things have unfolded, I just think differently.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I think you lose clarity and your priorities start to shift in ways that you start prioritizing things that you would never find important before, or that they were not your focus. That was not where you were heading. Mm-hmm. And now you're like, oop, I'm headed this way. Your priorities shifted so dramatically. Yeah. And yeah, I think that is a good sign that you're stuck in the season you're in, or you're stuck at where you are, and you're not focused again. You're not focused where you were focused once before. Yeah.
Because remember, when we think about the kind of life that we want, we really do use our thinking brain. We use this is what I'm choosing. If I have feelings, and then I have a belief system, and I want to align my life with what my belief system is. But if I go off my feelings, what happens? The priorities shift and they change, and we make the excuses for why that happens. Because I say it all the time. This is a funny example, but you can want to slap somebody. You can feel like you want to slap somebody because you're so mad or you're so angry, but your thinking brain says, that's assault. Don't do it. So you can't, even though we work on feelings a lot here, you cannot live your life off of feelings.
Right. And I think you lose the ability to do that. Like you're talking about, you lose clarity of what's important.
Yes.
You lose the ability to maintain.
Yes. If you live your life off your feelings, you will be one little jumbled up, messed up ball. Right. Because if you say, this is what I want my life to look off, let's say even just this year, let's just say you said to yourself, I believe in being debt free. I want to pay off, this bill. And then you start feeling, because a lot of times when we make a commitment to something, we start to get fatigued. Yes. We're like, I'm rerouting my money to pay this bill off, and I'm feeling financially starved. Like, how you feel, like you can feel like you're going through withdrawals and not being able to purchase the things that you purchased before. But then over here, you have this belief, no, I believe that God spoke to me to pay off this bill, and he is opening up my finances and being able to do this. But you've got to wrestle there for a while. And if you just allow that your priorities to slip in that area, you really will begin to lose clarity, because you've got part of yourself trying to talk yourself out of what you already know that God spoke to you to do.
Yeah, it's hard to maintain and hold on to that. So I do think it is a good sign that you're stuck.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, oh, there's no way, so I'm just going to stop trying.
Yes. And so many people just give up. Or like, kind of what we're talking about, accept the lesser version of your life, because you know what? It's better than what I used to do. I've paid 50% off of it, and 50% off of it is better than like I said, you don't want to get in condemnation, but at the same time, if the Lord said, do something, and you're like, I accept that challenge, Lord, I hear you told me to do that, and I want to do that. And then the reality of putting the stamina and the persistence and the everything that has to come together, like you have to prioritize that. Yep. Like maybe you want those new pair of shoes, but Lord has said,
I thought you wanted to pay off debt.
Not that you can't have
Is that in
both.
your allowance?
And so
Yeah.
as you begin to lose clarity, and a lot of times you can see that show up in your life as confusion.
Oh, that's good. That's
Yeah.
true.
It's like things that you felt really sure about. Now, all of a sudden, I'm confused. Kind of like the example when I said, I heard the Lord speak to me to pay off this bill. And then all of a sudden, did he?
Is that
Did he say
important?
vacation was okay? Like we
Right.
just began to lose that clarity around things that we were previously, no, I know that
Very
the Lord spoke
determined
to me.
about.
I know that the Lord wants me to move in this direction.
Right.
So, number 3, your passion has dwindled.
Ah.
When we begin to live that mediocre life, kind of like where God's calling us up here, but we're like, we're coming up from that. And before we were on fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind of like,
Yeah. Like a flat tire losing its air.
you just don't get excited
Mm-hmm.
about the things that you used to get excited about. You almost become apathetic, where it's just like like I said, this mediocrity is so
Blah.
deceptive.
Yeah.
To where it's like, I'm not completely miserable, so
This is fine.
it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But, and saying to yourself, well, you can't be excited all the time. And really you can't. But I would say excitement and passion are very, very, very different.
Oh, that's true.
Excitement, it's kind of like happiness and joy,
Mm-hmm.
Happiness is fleeting moments, but joy is a state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say passion is a state of mind, a state where you're like, yes, I know that the Lord put this in me. He put this passion, he put this purpose in me, and I'm going to lean into that. But when that starts to
Dwindle.
I like your example of that flat tire.
Yeah. It's just like, well, it does feel like it seeps out of you when you do get stuck and you're not
know.
aware.
Yeah.
And then you just start, just, bleh, I don't know, you don't have that same drive to go after what you were previously
No.
going to go after.
And the energy that comes with it.
Yeah.
Like not energy you have to manufacture,
Mm-hmm.
but just energy that just seeps out of you and oozes out of you from your passion,
Yeah.
overflows. It sounds like a wound or something that oozes out of you. Something that
Well,
overflows
yeah.
out of you.
Passion does pour
It
out of
does.
you. And when it stops, it is, it is. It's not fun.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, sometimes it just kind of stops up so that you don't really even initially understand that you've lost your passion in that area until you begin to talk to somebody. And then as you're talking to somebody, they begin to say, wow, you used to, what about this or what about that? You used to be so excited about that. Hey, are you still doing this? Well, life's gotten busy and I just really, that hasn't been my focus lately. You can begin to tell, and people around you will be able to tell when you begin to lose your passion
Yeah.
for something.
Yeah. Because you can see it when someone has passion. And so when they don't, it's fairly obvious.
And like I said, sometimes it can be so subtle. Sometimes like it's the way that you deflate, you just don't overnight, like, I have no passion for this. And like I said, the craziest part is your mind isn't always in touch when you get stuck. When your passion begins to diminish, it's like, it doesn't even feel like that's happening to you.
It's so slow.
It is. Whereas if you have some huge traumatic event in your life and then your focus shifts, you're like, oh, wow, because of this happened. But the passion dwindling is just,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you're just not excited about anything anymore.
When you were super pumped before.
Yeah. Which leads us into number 4, which is,
You become overly cynical.
yes.
Yeah.
And
Nothing is satisfying. Nothing is good. Everything sucks. Everybody's against you.
and that attitude can come on you. Like I said, that mediocrity is very deceptive, because it's not like you're going around and you're like, people are evil. It's just like your faith in people, you just don't immediately spring to gratitude. You don't immediately think, wow, people are awesome. It's just like, womp, womp,
Yeah.
womp.
It slowly leaks out.
Yeah. And then people begin to talk to you and you're like, people are like, anything is possible. And you're like, yeah,
No, it's not.
yeah.
I'll try again. Maybe never.
So where maybe before with your passion, you were very optimistic, even if like people are in general at different places with optimism and cynicism, but for your baseline, you become more cynical. Like, let's say I'm a pretty optimistic person, so I probably wouldn't go all the way over to the universe sucks. But I can tell at times in my life when my optimism has
Dwindled down.
And it's alarming when it does, if we see it. But a lot of times we just think we're having a hard week, or gosh, this summer is so hot. Right?
Oh my gosh, this summer is blazing hot. My gosh, and I think today's the hottest day of the year, like on record or something like that.
So it's easy to explain away why you feel less, or why you're less passionate, why you're less optimistic, why. It's easy with circumstantial things.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just don't notice.
Right. You kind of lose your, like when you were talking about even the passion part of it that leads into the cynicism, you lose your why. You lose your, like what you was driving you, why you wanted to do it, what initially ignited this. God told me this, but why you went to God and you said, give me something, give me this. What do you want me to do? Tell me that. And you lose your why in that.
Absolutely. And I'll say it's kind of just begins to stack on each other. As you can see, we're going through these points about being stuck. It's just like, when your passion dwindles, you become more cynical. Like you just keep going a little bit lower and lower
the heat
and
keeps
lower.
turning up, and you're not even aware that it's getting hotter in here.
We use the squeaky voice. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. It's okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. It's not a disaster yet.
Yeah.
So I'm okay. I'm fine.
And please don't tell me that I'm not. Please don't point out that I'm not.
I don't want to be out of the reality that I'm okay.
Right.
I don't want to be out of control that I'm okay.
Right.
Now, if you're just tuning in, I'd like to introduce, I'm Angie Lynch, and this is
Christina Crane.
And we're at Truth Driven Ministries. What we do here is we're a hospital for the hurting and a training ground for spiritual warriors. So if that's interesting to you, I'd hope you would like, follow, and watch our content. Go to our website and check us out. Now, point 5.
Okay.
What is point 5?
You lose touch with your dreams.
Aww.
I know.
It's
sad.
It is sad. Like I said, we're not talking about like as you go through life, sometimes things unfold and intentionally, thoughtfully, thought-provokingly, like you examine your life and you're like, wow, I think that this is more so where I'm supposed to go than here. We're not talking about that. We're talking about that the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy.
Right.
And he wants your dream. He wants your purpose. He wants absolutely to beat you down, and not beat you down to here.
Right.
I'll say, beat you down so low, something's wrong. But if he can steal your passion, have it dwindled, make you a little cynical, and what will happen to your dreams?
Well, you'll just live in that that one space that just is like, I'm never going to push for more, and I'm never going to let myself sink down. I'm just going to keep myself right in the middle so that I can't have the abundant life, that I can just have the okay life.
Yes. And
like what a way to get you. Man,
that's what I'm saying.
He's sneaky.
It is sneaky and it is terrible. But if you will look at Christians today, what problem do we have? We have a huge problem with getting stuck in mediocrity.
Right.
Where it's like, well, I'm going to church, or I'm going to do this. I read my Bible. I do this. We have a checklist of what we're doing that makes everything not so bad. But then we wonder why. I don't feel good about my life. I don't, my relationships are like, and, these are the promises of God, and I don't see the promises of God just activated in my life. And we wonder why people are leaving the churches in record numbers.
Right.
now. Because why? Because do we have a problem with mediocrity and getting stuck in there that we're no longer, we don't even know that we're there. So we're no longer reaching for that abundant life.
Right.
And I'm not saying sell yourself a story of smoke and mirrors and, oh yes, we're fine. We're awesome. I'm talking about truly having abundance in your life, an abundance of joy, an abundance of love that's not based off of circumstances. Because when you have a dream and he's put a dream in your heart, he will do everything to help you fulfill it. It's not, you don't have to get your resources. You don't have to get those connections. He will do it for you. But once you begin to get in a mindset of lack, of mindset of scarcity, then your dream will die because you will feel like it's up to you and you're like, well, you know what, I'm going to do this or I'll do this, or you will settle for less than your dream, less than the dream that he put in your heart.
Yeah, it's that fear again. It just will
And
take
the
you down.
wounds.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't. Oh, imagine you failed before. I can't fail again. Because then what will it mean? Right?
Oh my gosh, then you'll really be a loser.
Right.
Like
And
if you fell twice.
exactly. And if you're going after a dream, you're going to have some failures along the way.
Tons of them.
Right?
Tons of them. It's so funny, like when we talk about this often here, but when a baby starts walking,
Right.
like you don't expect for that baby just to get up out of, the crib or from
It's 6
crawling and
months.
just
You're supposed to start walking.
and
Yeah.
just walk perfectly. We have no expectation of that, but yet we just get our minds so jumbled that we have to be these perfect people. And no, mistakes are how we learn, and we
Right.
make a lot of them, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. But if you don't become comfortable with yourself, if you are stuck, your dream cannot happen when you are stuck. Can it?
No. And you've got to take that leap over that next step to get past that, to keep going after your dream and to not let that hope and all that tire go flat.
You don't want to go to the place where dreams go to die.
Gosh,
You
no. And
don't.
God doesn't want that for you either. Or he would have never put that in your heart.
No. Or even, like I said, we're talking about getting stuck in mediocrity where you just don't even know
Right.
that you're stuck. Because it's not so terrible. It's not so good, but it's not so terrible. So you're stuck in that place of you quit dreaming. You quit trying. You quit grasping for the ridiculous. I tell you what, if you think you can accomplish what God has set before you, then you're not dreaming big enough. You're not listening big enough, because everything that he has asked me to do, it taps me out of my comfort zone. It taps me out of my abilities, of my resources. So we do have to depend on him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we think that it's very linear. I'm going to do this, 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 and I'm going to equal that. And when, you do A and B and then C doesn't work out, you're like, oh, this is it. Forget it. Well, I got
know.
this far. I got to A and B, so
know.
this is fine.
And forget timing and
Right.
things like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what all is how it's going to line up and when it's going to line up, because you just want it to happen like right now.
Yes.
So we can get easily stuck in that place of like, well, I tried, or this is good enough, or this is close enough.
And how are you going to do your dream if you've lost your passion?
Ugh.
And then you become cynical about it.
You have no
lose your
drive.
clarity. Your deal breakers are all off the table
Oh,
now.
yeah.
Like
Because who cares?
there is no environment there that will support a dream.
Right.
Crazy, right?
Yep.
And it all happens, and we're like, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah.
We laugh here about squeaky voice. When you're not fine, but you're trying to talk yourself into you're fine. We all have that squeaky voice.
Yes, we all do that. Well, I love this because it does really lead into our next point.
Which is you begin to avoid the people you're accountable to.
And boy, will you ever. You lose your passion, you become cynical, you start breaking your deal breakers.
You will start to avoid the people that previously you've been accountable to, because the people that will hold you accountable, the people that love you, will begin to say, hey, what's going on? You're like, nothing, I'm fine.
Don't point that out. Don't tell me.
We don't want to know. We're
I don't wanna
fine.
hear it.
And especially if we're not even seeing it yet.
Right.
If we're not seeing it, we're like, a lot of times this is a critical make or break point in our life.
Oh,
If
that's
we
good.
begin to push out the people that we're accountable to, it really, you begin to spiral very, very quickly, because the people holding you accountable, they're not picking on you, they're not criticizing you. They are saying to you, hey, what's going on? This isn't you. This isn't the way that you want to live. Not what I want for you, but this isn't, you told me you wanted this. And a lot of times we are the people that people are accountable to.
Yes.
Just because of what we do here. So people will come in and we will ask them, well, what do you want to do?
Right.
And so we have a list of what they want to do. And then all of a sudden, they do slip into this area of being stuck. And then when you confront somebody about being stuck, it doesn't always go so pretty. Because for one, if we don't know we're stuck, we don't like it.
Yeah.
And when you're stuck, it doesn't feel good to be stuck.
Mm-mm.
And usually, like I said, we're stuck because of like a fear or a wound, or we've just, all of a sudden we've woken up in this stuck point. And to get unstuck, it's going to be very uncomfortable. So you will start avoiding the people that you're accountable to. And
Especially if you're not in a place where you're miserable or it's frustrating. If you are in that mediocrity and you're like, if I go after this, if I awaken this dream again, it's really going to turn my life upside down. And I'm not trying to do that right now. So you will avoid those people.
you will, and not just even avoid, you will push them out of your life.
That's true.
Because you will tell yourself, they will confront you with truths, and you will be like, I don't like this. And you will begin to tell yourself a story. Well, they're just pressuring me, or they don't know me, or we begin to tell ourselves stories to keep ourselves stuck. That's one of the hardest things. When you're stuck, you don't like to become unstuck because it's comfortable to be stuck, and you don't see the compelling reasons around you anymore. You've lost touch and you've lost clarity with the compelling reasons of what's really important in your life. So you will kick people that you've been accountable out, and you will tell yourself a great story like, you've outgrown this person.
I
you
love
don't
that.
need this. I know.
I've outgrown them.
Now you're smarter than that person. Okay.
It's a good one.
We hear
it a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And when you have somebody in your life that you're accountable to, like, gosh, like, we just want people to be so enthralled with their life, and it's not about us. And so, but when you're trying to kick somebody out of your life, they'll make it about.
Yeah.
They'll
Especially
make
if
it
they're
about
in
you.
that cynical place. I mean, it's easy to go there because
Yeah.
then you are enemy number one.
You are. And you're not out for their good, and
Right.
people will tell themselves stories.
Yes.
So 6, you avoid the people who will hold you accountable. 7, your light has dimmed.
Ugh.
You begin to, if you notice, these are kind of like, they get a little bit
Harder.
a little bit more intense in your life when your light is dimmed. Now, whether that's because you've dimmed it because you have people in your life that aren't holding you up, that aren't challenging you, that aren't reminding you. The beautiful things about running with people who have purpose is they remind you, hey, we're doing this for a reason. We're doing this for the kingdom, that we're going to show up for the kingdom. And when you remove your people that you're accountable to, you have to go to people who aren't going to hold you accountable. And you have to kind of create a life that will sustain not being plugged in, not having connection, not being accountable, not being responsible. So your light really does, the things, like I said, you lose clarity. The things that used to be important, no longer important. Because why? Because you've told yourself a story about, well, I didn't really want that. I was just, that was just a season. Like, you will begin to lie to
Right.
yourself and convince yourself that your light dimming is a good thing.
Yeah.
Deception is tough. So tough.
You won't even know your light is dimmed until one day somebody says something to you or asks you about it, and that starts coming out of you, that passion. You start talking about that thing that you were driving against, and you're like,
you get a taste of it.
oh my gosh. And you're like, man, I forgot that feeling. I forgot what it felt like to want that. I forgot
Yeah.
about God talking to me about that. And I think that's the only way you start
know.
to go, oh my gosh, my light.
You get a
know?
glimpse into it, or you even see somebody that you used to
Oh,
know
yeah.
be so excited about something or be so passionate. And then you're like, for a moment, you're like, I used to be passionate like that. I used to be excited. I'm not talking about like in a jealousy thing, but I'm talking about like, the veil is rent and you're like, oh my gosh, like that. I used to feel that way. I used to get excited. I used to be passionate.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh,
You just,
I feel dead inside.
yeah.
I don't feel that
Right.
anymore.
And
I'm less in touch with that.
You tell yourself, oh, well, now my focus and my passion has to be somewhere else, which that could be true, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about that's like going back to your deal breakers and things like that. You've shifted out of a place of fear. You've shifted out of a wound. You've shifted out of a place that you weren't even supposed to shift to. And your light will just burn out.
I know.
Luckily, God keeps it flickering, but
Yes.
it'll dim.
That's what I'm saying. To stay out of mediocrity, to stay out of being stuck, you really have to set your life up and we're talking about what we're going to talk about in the next slide. But you have to be so intentional about creating and supporting like a whole system in your life to support this, because it's so easy. The enemy is very deceptive, and you can just fall down that ladder rung so easily without even recognizing it. What is number 8?
You slip into old patterns.
Ooh.
Ugh, that's a horrible feeling.
It is when you're like, okay, I had freedom in this area,
Right.
and now why do I feel back in bondage in this area? This used to be an area that I struggled in, but then I didn't struggle in for a long time. You ever notice that when you have a breakthrough, you also have to build the structure to maintain that breakthrough. And then when that structure starts breaking down and you get stuck, like it's like, wow, I don't ever think you can slip back to zero, because you'll catch somewhere. But when you've previously had a breakthrough and then you start seeing old patterns, like even like we were talking about earlier, saying no to people. If you find yourself not being able to say no to people or saying yes to things that are causing you not to be taking the best care of yourself, that is an example of what I would say. If you're hanging around people that don't have the same belief system that you did, that becomes really important. We're to love all people, and absolutely, it's easy to love other people, but I'm talking about your God squad, the people that keep you centered, the people that keep you accountable, the people that are your tribe that you run with. If you have replaced them with people that won't challenge you, that won't hold you accountable,
Who allow you to live in that mediocrity, because that's where they live.
Yes.
And that's where they're comfortable. Then we can all be comfortable in
Being
mediocrity together.
with no passions, our
Yep.
dreams have died.
Exactly.
Because you will have, wherever you get stuck, you will have to create a life that supports that stuckness.
Yeah.
And you begin to lose your old life. So you're subtly slipping back into old patterns. Now, the last one that I want to talk about is, because this is like where you slip, I think, before you can hit and bounce back up. If you have to, hopefully you catch yourself somewhere along there. But you hit this, you begin to recognize that you forget who Jesus called you to be, and you are living below the identity he called you to. And I think when you begin to hit that, and this is basically another way to say that, is when you begin to realize you are living as a lesser version of yourself, and you didn't ever want to get to that point, you begin to start violating your own value system. You begin to do things that are like, God, I'm disappointed in myself, not in a condemning way, but just in a realization way. It's like, man, that's not who I am. I know that they say that the Holy Spirit convicts you of sin, but I believe more accurately, the Holy Spirit convicts you of who you are and your righteousness. And when he convicts us of our righteousness, then it automatically makes us like look at our life and say, that's not who I am. That's not who he created me to be. And in that, we're called back up. Like if you can get in touch with who he has called you and created you to be and realize that, wow, I'm living below where he has called me to live right now. It's really, it gets eye-opening.
Yeah.
And hear me, we all get to these points where we get stuck. And one day when you wake up and you're like,
Oops.
this is not my life.
How did I get here?
This is not my
Right.
life. You can begin to crawl back out of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But not until you hit that point.
Yeah.
But if-
Hopefully you can do it
Right.
before you get down to that point. You can
Right.
catch yourself along the way. But that's why it's so important. Why are we talking about,
Yep.
like a lot of times there's just subtle things in your life where you begin to, kind of like when we started off this live where, are you feeling like you're living like you're missing something, like you're meant for more, you're meant, and not in a prideful way, but just in it's like, wow, I'm missing something. I used to have a spark and I don't have that spark. And what happened to that spark? And if you will allow yourself the space and have conversations about what do I want and how did I get here, you will bounce back up out of being stuck. But that's for our next live.
Our next one, we're going to talk about how to get unstuck.
Yes, and in we have a couple events before then, so we'll meet in person, most of y'all. But if you're a part of the online audience, we will in our next live really address what to do when you're stuck. Now that you know that you're stuck, we always say it's stuck like Chuck.
Yeah, man, I'm stuck like Chuck over here. Yeah.
If you're stuck, don't worry, because we're not going to leave you hanging. We're going to come back and we're going to talk to you about ways to get unstuck and really ways to stuck-proof your life so that you don't have to get there again. Remember, the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And so if you are not having life and having it more abundantly, something's being stolen from you, don't let that happen, because God's promises are that you can have life and have it more abundantly. Now, I'm going to pray us out. Christina will. We're here doing it solo, so she will be turning the live off. I was going to say,
oh, don't finish that.
I
know. No, I'll be shutting
some
off
of you got what I was about to
shutting
say.
down the
but
live.
Yes,
Yeah.
we will be disconnecting from the live.
Yeah.
But so let's pray. I just really would hope, Lord, I just lift everybody up here, Lord, that there is anybody that's stuck, Lord, that you know where they're stuck at and you know how to meet them. Lord, if you have somebody that's just realized that they're stuck today, that they didn't even know that they were stuck, I thank you for your compassion and your gentleness and your mercies that are new every day, that no matter where we're stuck at, Lord, that you see us, that you have not forgotten us, you have not abandoned us, Lord, that we are not alone in this, Lord, that we have you, and we also have a community that we can rely on and depend on. Lord, I just thank you. I thank you that we have position with you to come boldly before the throne and ask questions and get answers, Lord, that you just love to answer questions from your children. In Jesus' name, amen.